animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's a cold, misty morning. The giant orb that is the sun is providing some relief. This is Safari Live. Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a beautiful start to our sunrise safari. My name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Craig, the Batman Zimmet, and we're going to be having a beautiful morning. I think it looks like it's going to be a clear skies that we're going to have. The sun has just come out, and so it promises to be a great day. You can hear the Impalas going crazy in the background, and that is because the male is rutting. Now remember, this is a live interactive safari, so for those of you that are new to us, remember hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and for those of you that have been watching for a while, we'd love to hear from you and all the questions that you may have about the African wilderness. You can see there's our male Impala just slinking off between the bushes, rounding up his females. He's been very busy this morning. Lots of noise has been made while it's still nice and cool before it gets a bit hot, and he has to then try and sort of rein it in a little bit. But the plans for the morning is probably going to be along the lines of heading to the east and trying to just see if we can't find any signs of that mating pair of leopards. I'm really quite desperate to go and see Quarantine. It's the last of the Karula offspring that I haven't seen, so I'm going to try and head in that direction. And I think Jamie Patterson is going to try and head more to the northwest, should I say, to go look for any signs of the Nkumas or the Birminghams. Now on my right hand side I've got a beautiful view of James Hendry and Sebastian Romby and Herbie as they make their way, or not so beautiful view as he limps along. James, if you limp like that you may be fodder for many an animal out here. This is the old crew. We've got James in front, and then Seb, who's got a few grey hairs showing, and then Herbie leading the way, making sure that doddery old bunch doesn't get in any way sorted out. Right, so we'll leave the bushwalk team to carry on their morning and enjoy this beautiful sunrise, and we're going to carry on ourselves and drive into the golden sunrise and see if we can't find anything. Now, I did hear a leopard calling a few seconds ago. It does sound like it's quite far away, and I know Herbie and James are quite keen to try and see if they can't find Hosanna. Now, I don't think it's Hosanna calling, but maybe, just maybe, Tingana is around and is calling somewhere to the north of us. It sounds like up towards Sagari, Cutline, Buffelshoek boundary, that area, so we'll see. Maybe Jamie on her loop round checking for the Nkuhumas might get lucky with the male leopard as well. So we'll have to wait and see. Now I wonder if any of you did see any signs for Hosanna last night coming out on the dam cam. If you did, remember hashtag Safari Live and you can let us know. I'm sure it will help James with his quest. Now we're going to carry on, like I say, and we're going to try and head towards the east and see if we can't find that romantic couple in this beautiful morning light. And while we do that, let's go across to James so he can say hello.
Right, hello everybody, good morning and welcome to this end of the Sunrise Safari. I'm not really feeling as decrepit as I may have looked there. My name is James Hendry. On camera today is Sebastian, and in the final control, making her world premiere today, we have Chantal. She is on the D1 Vox, and Louisi is on the D2. That might be meaningless to you. That means Louise is receiving your questions, Chantal is feeding them through and telling me what to do for the course of the morning. Now, we are completely live. Hashtag Safari Live is how you get hold of us. Louise will receive your tweet. She'll send it through to Chantal, who will feed it into my ear. I will then do my level best to answer any questions that you might have during the course of the day or any comments. Our plan is to head along that way. You can see Herberto is just, well, he's just sort of, I think he's wiping his nose at the moment, but he's going to be hopefully tracking Hosanna fairly soon with us, so we're going to do our level best to try and find him. Tristan's going to go down there and on his way to Cheetah Plains, which I think is what he's going to do. He'll just check Twin Dams to see if there aren't any tracks of Hosanna there. In the meantime, we will just enjoy the magnificence of yet another beautiful African dawn, and I hope that you will enjoy it with us wherever you happen to find yourselves on planet Earth. Good. Let's get going. Didn't hear too much in the way of alarm calls last night. In fact, I heard nothing last night other than one mosquito that tried to get at my face. But I have recently installed a mosquito net above my bed, and so it was with great joy that I heard it going as it bashed against the net, and I thought, yeah, sucks to be you. And then it left. That's my story of the night. Other than that, I heard nothing in the way of alarm calls. I do not know what a lion sounds like anymore, so I don't know if we'll ever see a lion again here. Which is very sad, of course, but I'm sure they'll come back eventually. Right, what piece of biology can we begin our morning story with? Well, let us start over here. What I always find quite interesting is that, especially if you're learning trees, it's often quite difficult with a tree this size. And the reason it's difficult with a tree this size is because the leaves on a young tree are often twice the size of the leaves on a mature tree. So this is an apple leaf, so named because apparently this sounds like eating an apple. Yeah, I never quite understood that. Anyway, it is enormous. It's much bigger, probably 3 times actually the size of a mature apple leaf tree. And the reason it's so big, of course, is because it is the main source of energy for the plant. And so when it is still getting height and still pushing out branches, which in turn will have lots of leaves on them, in order to increase the surface area of its energy production, it must produce big leaves, because it doesn't have a lot of branches, and that means that it cannot increase the surface area by pushing out lots of different leaves. Now, of course, the investment in a big leaf is large, because it is big, and therefore if you break it off or you lose one leaf, you lose proportionately an enormous amount of surface area. But because of the lack of branches and because you're a new tree, you don't really have an option. So you've got to put out the big leaves. And when they're bigger or when they're mature, they're often not much larger than that. Which I think is quite an interesting piece of biology, don't you, Seb? Are you fascinated beyond measure? He's just sort of shaking his head slightly. Anyway, that is the first lesson that I have to tell you this morning. Chantal, are you still with us? It's not easy being a director over here, I've got to tell you. And the very first time that you're doing it is not easy at all. You might also be wondering why on earth it is that I carry a stick. It's not because I need to lean on it. Well, sometimes I do, but that's not why I'm leaning on it. I carry it so I can point at things, and then, if something vicious like a vicious sort of steenbok comes running at me, then I can bop it on the head. One person I would never consider bopping on the head is Jamie Patterson.
Good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. My name is Jamie, and this morning Fergus is on camera with me, and we're eagerly awaiting the sun rising part of the Sunrise Safari. So exciting times. I was on the western boundary of Djuma only to find out that there's a leopard calling to the east, and the northern boundary somewhere around that general direction, the direction of the sun, and that is where we're now racing off to. And the reason I was a bit confused was a few moments earlier I picked up on tracks for probably Tingana, walking south down the road I was on. Now all of a sudden I'm pretty sure it's him calling to the northeast. So Tingana's pulled his tricks once again. He's the big dominant male leopard of this area, and he likes to march. He really does. He walks enormous distances, especially at the moment. I don't know what it is that's causing his increase in patrolling, but he's definitely moving a lot more than he used to. Oh no! I've wrapped myself in the steering wheel. Stop sniggering at me, Fergus. Fergus is not sniggering, he says. Now, Skip, who is one of our 12-year-old viewers and one of our regular viewers, Skip, you want to know where is Shungile? Skip, we don't know. There was a case of mistaken identity a couple of days ago where during the TV show on the Saturday afternoon, we were with Hosanna, and unfortunately Hosanna was reported as Shungile. Apparently the cold is playing games with all of us in terms of identifying the individual male, female leopards. But Shungile was identified as crossing north into Djuma. It wasn't Shungile, it was Hosanna. It definitely was Hosanna because I was with him. You were all with me when I was with him. So it was definitely Hosanna. We don't know where Shungile is. I'm sure she's around. And it's quite possible she's been close to her brother the entire time. I haven't picked up on her tracks in a while. I've seen Hosanna's tracks. I have not seen Shungile's tracks. I'm not worried though. I'm sure she's absolutely fine. You know how much... Oh, that's what I want to be doing, Fergus. No, don't. Oh, never mind.
Well, now you have the opportunity.
Now I have the opportunity. Shall I go sit on the termite mound? The hornbills, they're one of the bird species that do this the most frequently. They go and they sit on a termite mound because there's a whole load of hot air rising up from the depths or the bowels of the termite home underneath the surface of the soil. There they are over there. And so it's a great way to warm up, essentially. It's a really nice way for them to warm up. I think that's quite a pretty silhouette, especially if they do their display. But maybe that's what we should do, Fergus. We can't. We've got a leopard to look for. We can't go and sit on a termite mound. Come on, you two. How cool is that? Courtship display of the yellow-billed hornbill. Red-billed do it too. But they're going to go one more time. They, for some reason, remind me of synchronized swimmers when they do that. That was half-hearted. One more time. For luck. Male on the right, female on the left. Don't you think they look like synchronized swimmers? Or divers? Maybe those diving pairs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those diving pairs that kind of do the synchronized tumble. That's exactly what they remind me of. It's so perfectly synchronized, and if you watch, to me it always looks as though the female initiates it, which I've noticed in ground hornbills as well when they call. And then all of a sudden they both do it. Wings up, and okay. They've flown off, and we need to go. We need to go and catch up with this leopard while he's calling, because if it's Tingana, he's probably going to be on Torchwood by the time I get to Zoe's. He moves so fast. Torchwood is unfortunately another property we can't go on to. And usually when Tingana does this, when he skips through Djuma, he's on his way to Torchwood. In fact, I'm almost tempted to go and sit on our eastern boundary now. Well, not now, because I'm on the other side of Djuma, but straight away. Hello, Gnoos. Good morning. Hello. Good morning. Here's our local herd of Wildebeest. Also looking quite chilly. And shining in the sun. They look gold. No, they don't. They look bronze in the morning light. I'm not too stressed about this leopard getting away because Aubrey and Lex, two other guides on this reserve, are also looking. So I'm not panicking because we're stopping at different things. Sometimes we get caught up in the search for leopards and we forget to look at the other wonderful things around us. Having a scratch. Don't forget as well to send through your questions on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. What a beautiful morning it is. I wonder... Just move backwards a little bit. Look at these hornbills here in the road. Baby on the right, I think. An adult on the left. At first I was just wondering if perhaps the chicks that we've been looking at over the last few days had perhaps broken out of their hole, but I don't think so, no. The one on the right is very, very young. Is that nice? All the termites gathered there in the dung. The manic expression on their faces. There's something interesting in their eyes. Especially when they're attacking all of your car windows. They move from one of our cars to the other, our personal vehicles, in the car park. And they tap on the windows and then defecate down the sides of the car. They're most definitely our resident camper birds, attacking their own reflections. Okay, sorry Hornbills, I'm going to have to... Oh, I can't go anywhere, there's a wildebeest in the road. Now, Bobby, looking at our hornbills, you want to know whether or not any of them get any parasites or any, ticks. They do. They get fleas, they get ticks, they get pepper ticks especially, so we sympathize with them because we know just what it's like to be covered in pepper ticks. Pepper ticks, of course, being the larval form of the various species of ticks that we get out here. So they do get ticks, and they approach that problem in different ways. One is obviously active grooming, so preening their feathers. Another is to do something known as anting, which is where they go and they sit on a nest of ants, and they let the ants swarm all over them, and the ants do a wonderful job of cleaning away the ticks and the fleas and the parasites there. And they'll also release a type of acid, they think, that will also help to keep the feathers clean, basically fumigating their feathers. And another approach is to go and have a dust bath, because that's basically exfoliation for the birds. It's a way of dislodging the ticks and the parasites that are attached to them. So absolutely they do. They get mites as well, mites in the base of their feathers, and obviously mites are a difficult one, because mites can actually also help to keep feathers clean. Just like you have mites that live in the base of your eyelashes. Very peaceful way to start a morning. Ah, Marco, another very accurate observation as always. Yes, hello, Wildebeest. Have you only just seen me? All of a sudden stopped and stared at me. Marco said that the hornbills look as though they're wearing very comfortable pajama pants. I could not agree more. I'm actually quite jealous of them. That's exactly what I would love to be wearing. We were discussing it earlier. The sheer comfort of a comfortable pair of tracksuit trousers or something like that. They do look like they're wearing comfy pajama pants. I would show you, but they've both flown off. All right, Wildebeest, that's the last one crossing. And then I would like to carry on. Here we go. Except for him. He's been left behind. You picked the wrong way to go, buddy. Hey, boy. Come on then, off you go. Catch up. Here's the male following along behind the females with great eagerness. Yes, your ladies went the other way. Oh? They don't seem to be too keen on you. As soon as he ran towards them, they ran away. Off you go. Catch up with your ladies. As our wildebeest gallops away, I don't think James is going to be doing too much galloping this morning, but you never know.
Hello everybody, no I'm not galloping. Is that what the link was? I'm certainly not in any state of galloping right now. We are on our way down to try and see if Hosanna hasn't popped out here. Herbert's gone off behind us there to see what's going on and see if he couldn't find some tracks there. Now, as I was saying to Seb earlier on, I was saying already things are now starting to sort of dry out slightly. The spiders are not quite as numerous as they once were. The flowers are starting to wither slightly. And over here, we have got a really beautiful little spider. One of the last of the season. No, they'll be around for a while. But I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of yellow and black striped next to my finger there. Can you see it?
Oh, there, yes.
He's a tiny little thing. Probably only, 2 millimeters long, if that. And just starting to build her web this morning. And in fact, here is her... I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I've only just noticed it now. Her web is here. Can you see it at all, Seb?
Yeah, it's very faint.
Very faint.
Try. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? And she'll sit here waiting patiently for things like flies to fly into it so that she can nip out and bite them to death and kill them and eat them. That is the way of the spider. And then I wonder... So here she is. She's knocking about over here. And I wonder if this is a different species of spider, or perhaps it's an egg sac that she's made. I can't see. And she's just securing all the lines. There, she's going back towards it now. I wonder if she doesn't live in there and perhaps just puts this web up. Yeah, she's going straight into that little cocoon that she's made for herself. That is so cool. So she set her net for breakfast. Now she's going into a little resting spot where she'll take a load off, I guess, after she's set up the web. That's just fantastic. Now this time of year, I think as I've said to you before, leaves me with a certain sense of nostalgia, and I was thinking about it yesterday. It's got something to do, of course, with the withering of the vegetation. We so longed for the summertime, it came, and now it is going again. But I was thinking, yes, it's a feeling of nostalgia, but it's not necessarily a depressing sense of nostalgia. It's quite a fond feeling of the summers past, and now that we're going into the sort of winter time. And I suppose I thought of it as a little bit like as we get older, I suppose we tend to think of things as getting a little bit depressing as we become more decrepit and our muscles don't do quite what they used to do, etc., etc. And I thought it was quite a nice parallel with us getting older and the seasons changing, and how every season has its beauty, and so perhaps as we get older as human beings, every age has its own beauty. That is my philosophy for the morning. We'll go back to the biology now. John, you had a question about how strong spiders' webs are. Well, the golden orb web spider, which we find out here, not in great profusion these days, has the strongest, as far as I know, is the web that it builds is the strongest natural substance known to man. It has a higher tensile strength than steel. And it has been used, I know that many years ago, I mean, even when I started guiding some 17 years ago odd, they were talking about genetically modifying golden orb web spiders and various other kinds of spiders to produce sufficient silk for them to use in Kevlar and bulletproof vests and that sort of thing. So it is an immensely strong substance. And I mean, you saw how astonishingly fine that web was. But it will catch a fly sort of maybe 3 or 4 times the size of that spider, which is quite something. So it is very, very powerful indeed. There's quite a lot of dew on the grass at the moment. And what it does, especially amongst the panicum, is leave this kind of sweet sweet sugar on the end of the seeds, which is quite nice. It's not delicious, but it's not bad. I do actually quite like that. These panicums, you can see all the seeds have been cast to the wind, or in this case probably a bird that's come and eaten them. And they will be passed on and dropped wherever the dung sits. Now, Skip, you're wondering, as we sit in quite moist sort of environs here, about cactus, which of course are desert adapted plants. And you say, do we get desert adapted cactus here? Skip, we don't get desert adapted cactus here. Cactuses are a New World species, or a New World group of plants. We don't get them here at all. There is no such thing as an African cactus. We do have an evolutionary equivalent, however, which is a spiky green succulent which looks like a cactus to the untrained eye, and that's called a euphorbia. And euphorbia plants are very much similar in many ways to cactus. They have spikes, like I say, they're sort of green and fleshy, but they are very different. They're not related to cactuses. And the important part of that is, or the interesting part of that, in much the same way that hummingbirds and sunbirds out here have evolved or have exhibit what we call convergent evolution. So they have grown into similar ecological niches in different parts of the world, although they are not related. And so cactuses and euphorbias are much the same as that. That's a good question. Cactuses. We do get cactuses here, but they are not naturally occurring. And we get the queen of the night, which is a dreadful invasive species, and it does come into the Sabi sand from time to time, but it will come in along the river systems. And as I was mentioning the other day, we have those people called Working for Water, and what the Working for Water people do is they chop out alien vegetation, and so they have to come in every so often and clean out the alien vegetation, like the Queen of the Night. Somebody who has never, I can tell you for free, been accused of being a Queen of the Night is Tristan Dix.
Right, so we've come all the way towards Chitwa airstrip, and we're here for a very, very special reason. Now, I've just got to try and find what we're looking for, but it's going to be a good day if we do find what we are looking for. So now, it should be somewhere around where I am now. Going to just check. I think it's on this road parallel to the airstrip, but unfortunately the news I think of our mating couple is that they might have gone north into Torchwood when it comes to the Leopard front. So we're just going to spend some time around this area first before we do head up to that area and just make sure. But it should be somewhere here, and it's the most beautiful morning light, and I'm hoping what we're looking for is going to come onto the actual airstrip itself so that we can see it in the open. But hopefully it'll be around some in the corner here. There seems to be, though, the roads leading to this area have been leopard highways. There's been leopards moving all over the place. There's tracks for males, tracks for females. So I did see the tracks for Thandi, for where Jamie was looking yesterday, and they've just found her now at Treehouse Dam, which is on Little Gari. So she is around. Now I'm just going to try and see. This is where we should be, but I don't see the other vehicle that I'm looking for. Maybe a little bit further north. So it seems like, yeah, the leopards are all over the place, and I wonder if maybe Tingana, the calling that we're hearing on Djuma, is in response to other leopards moving around. So David, you're wondering when Shongile is going to start mating. Well, Shongile is still a while. She's only now just approaching 18 months, so she's going to be a while until she starts mating. She'll only probably mate, earliest I would say, is about 2.5 years, which is when Karula had her first litter, but it would probably be in all likelihood or maybe a little bit later than that. Then generally, in my experience, it's between sort of 3 and 4 years that they'll go into their first sort of mating that's successful, because they start mating at already around 2.5, but often those first few times that they mate, they're actually very unsuccessful and they don't get what they need. Now, I've found the vehicle that I was looking for. I've just got to try and find a way in here. It's quite thick and dense, and this area that we're in, there's a few trees you've got to be a little bit careful of. So I'm just going to try and watch, and I'm hoping that he is going to move towards the airstrip itself. Now I've given you a bit of a clue as to what gender it is, but now we need to show you what species it is. So I'm going to just try and get in here, Craig, so that you can see. Now he's lying in the long grass, which is not ideal. So there we go. So there we go, we have one of the Birmingham boys, and this is the first male lion I've seen in months, so I'm super excited. I'm not 100% sure which one it is. It looks like it could be Tinyo, but I might be wrong. We'll have to rely on all of you at home. Remember, #SafariLive with the animal that you think it is. I think it is Tinyo, but it's difficult to say. At the moment all we've got is an ear and a mane, so it could, I might be wrong completely. Grass is very long, and I'm hoping as the sun comes up a little bit, it's going to start hitting him, and that might prompt him to move closer towards the airstrip and not just to go flat in this long grass, because if he decides to lie down in this long grass, it's going to be very difficult to actually see him. But it's hard to ID this Birmingham from this angle, so hopefully you can see the sun is just behind him there, and I'm hoping as it kind of comes past, he might then decide to move. If he doesn't, what I might do is just go around a little bit. It seems like it's a little bit more open from the other side there, and I might be able to get a better view of him. But this is so good. I'm quite glad that we found him. And the other interesting thing is that there is tracks for all of the sticks and their little cubs around this area as well. So I'm hoping that he might start calling at some stage, and maybe the others respond, and we'll be able to find the little sticks cubs. They're so cute, and I haven't seen them in the last 3 weeks, so I'm sure they've already gotten much bigger, but it would be great to find all of those little cubs again and have a look at them. So we'll definitely be listening and looking out. And you can see he's busy grooming himself, and I'm sure that's because he's been walking around quite a bit, and he would have picked up quite a bit of dew in this wet grass. So it's just to get that coat nice and clean again. Also any parasites that he might have picked up. And at this time of the year, there's quite a few sort of burrs and types of seeds that stick to you. And much like James was talking about yesterday evening about seeds sticking to your socks, it's the same thing for a lion. He ends up getting a whole bunch of things sticking all over him, and so that's why they go through this grooming process before they decide to lie down and sleep for the day. But I'm hoping that the sun is going to start now. It's interesting is that we didn't hear him calling much this morning. He did call probably, I would say, at about 5:30, so an hour before we got going. But other than that, he's been quite quiet, which is strange. So ladybugs and daisies, you say it looks like Tinyo. Well, I agree with you. I think it looks like him, but it's very difficult to say for 100% sure. We'll have to wait until he pops his head up again, and then we can actually get a better view. I will tell you one thing though, is that what is quite amazing is I haven't seen much of the Birminghams in the last probably 2-3 months. We've had sort of sporadic sightings of them, but I can't believe how dark his mane has gotten. It's gotten very ginger, and there's this black streaks running through it. So it's really, they do look a lot darker than what they're used to, and they're starting to become quite formidable in the sort of size, and the manes are getting much thicker. So it really is very good to see them again. Now I'm hoping that the rest will be around. It's been interesting to see the sort of movement of the Birminghams. Seems to be 3 that are hanging around together, and they've been around Simambili and have been moving quite a bit, and then there's always one that seems to be off on its own. Probably to find that's because they're trying to balance their time between the Inkahumas and the sticks, and so you keep finding one will come down this way and the other one goes back to where the Inkahumas are, and they just keep trading with each other. Because I know the other day when they had all 3 of them, Tinyo was part of it, and it was in Suko or Neno, one of those 2 that was missing from the 3. So it just seems that they're taking turns coming down to where the sticks are. Now you can see the light is just starting to hit the top of his mane, so I wonder if he's not going to start waking up now and moving. And I wonder if we can just go close in on his mane and see if there's any dew on it. Sometimes you get these little golden droplets of dew on there, just on the top. Hopefully he puts his head up like he did just now, and it will almost look like he's got these little sort of white spots all over him. But whatever he's doing it with a bit of relish. He seems to be grooming quite confidently. So Wesley, you're wondering what he's doing. Well, he's grooming. He's licking with his tongue. Now his tongue has got these little hooks on it that are able to basically pull off all these little parasites that he might have picked up, or the grass seeds that I was talking about just now. So he's cleaning himself effectively and getting himself prepped for a day of rest. Remember, the lions are now starting to come to the end of their sort of active period. They normally active around sunset, sunrise, and a little bit into the evening, and so they're a lot more crepuscular than we think. And you'll find now that he's just starting to groom so that he can then begin to rest for the day. So there we go, you can see his tongue's out, just grooming his paws now. And it is quite difficult to see through all this long grass, but there we go. So, kitty cat, you're wondering if lions and leopards tend to stay out of each other's way. Well, leopards more so than lions. Lions will actively confront a leopard because they know they're much bigger and more powerful, and they have the dominance over a leopard, so they'll assert that dominance. Whereas leopards with lions, leopards know that a lion is bigger and therefore a major threat, and so leopards will try and move away from lions. And often when you hear lions calling, you'll find leopards moving in the opposite direction, away from there. It's not to say that it doesn't happen where there is interaction between the two, and luckily for leopards, they are able to climb, so they can get into the sort of high branches of trees and try and get away from lions in that regard. They also tend to be a little bit more agile than these big cumbersome males, but it's not to say that leopards don't get caught out every now and then. There was a leopard in this area called Wabayiza, who was a son for Tundi, and he was unfortunately caught by the sticks and actually eaten by them. So it does happen from time to time. Now I'm going to try and just reposition a little bit, because where we are is very difficult. All you can see is the back of his head. So I want to just try and see if I can't get around a little bit, because really otherwise we're going to have a tough time of actually seeing him. There's also another vehicle that's going to come in, so I'm going to just try and see if I can't make space for them so that they can also see. So there we go, that will be a bit better for them as well. Now the problem is where we are is this black monkey orange. Now it's this hard woody plant, and it sounds terrible when you drive over it, but unfortunately it has to be done. Now, while we try and reposition and get ourselves into a better spot, let's go back to Jamie and see where she is and how she's faring on her search.
I am doing absolutely fine, thank you very much. I'm sitting in the sun, warming up ever so slightly after our rush to get here, and sitting with Fergus and listening, which is quite nice, isn't it, Ferg?
Very nice.
Listening to the sounds of the birds and waiting desperately for this male leopard to call once again. Oh, who's Aubrey calling? Not me, apparently. Now there's one concern that I have. One big concern, and that's that we're searching for Djuma, the male leopard, the skittish male leopard, who is sort of dominant on the boundary of Tingana's territory. And if it is Djuma, skittish leopards don't call during the day. They stay completely silent. They call at night, but they don't really call during the day at all. So it might have been that that was the last time he was going to call, that sound that Tristan heard, and now he's gone completely silent. Or it's Tingana, in which case we've got a much better chance of finding him, because Tingana will call all day long if he feels like it. But I haven't heard a sound. I don't smell any popcorn, and I haven't picked up on a track. But we're going to keep trying, because there was a leopard calling somewhere, apparently, I didn't hear it because I was too far away, but apparently from somewhere around this general area. But if he's moving east, I think we better get moving as well. Okay, let's go see. Now, Laurie, you want to know if the leopards are moving more because of the change of season? I guess they're moving more regularly, yes, I suppose you could say that. It is winter, therefore it's cooler, therefore they're going to be active for a bit longer. The reason I said that with a degree of hesitation is because leopards are weird. In a nice way, I say that with great affection, but they are weird, and they'll, you know, the textbooks will tell you that they are nocturnal creatures, but I've seen leopards moving about in the middle of the day. I've seen Tingana scent marking on a day when we'd had to start the drive late because it was too hot for the cameras and they kept shutting down. I've seen him walking when it was well over, I think it was over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It was boiling. and Tingana was just marching around like he wasn't even vaguely bothered. And he's big, you know, I can understand a small female being comfortable. I'm going to go off in search of our leopards and respond to Tristan on the radio. Meantime, James has had more luck than I have, and he's found a spider.
We've found almost dozens of spiders here, and well, we found hundreds during the course of this wet season. But what Seb has managed to spot inside the bowels of a Ziziphus plant is a tropical tent web spider. And normally they live in fairly sort of, well, much more open areas. This one seems to have found itself a much more secluded spot inside the Ziziphus. And what we learned the other day from Steph, of course, is that the adult that has made those egg sacs will probably not survive the winter. So she will probably die during the course of the winter, and her eggs will sit like they are now until the end of the winter, when they will hatch and start to build their own webs. And somehow, encoded in their DNA, will be the pattern for how they will build their webs, and I just think that that's rather remarkable. So there are going to be plenty of little tropical tent web spiders that come out of those egg sacs. They're completely harmless to human beings, so those of you who are arachnophobic, please do not worry. Now, we look over here, we have got further spiders, and if you look just over the wholeness of this dead and dying Ziziphus bush, you can see maybe that there are spiders that have spun their webs around there like that. You can see that there's a very small orb web. Where did I see it? Tiny little orb web in there. Can you see that one there at all? And the spider there is less than 1 millimeter in length. And all of them, of course, producing just the most wonderful picture as the sun shines through the webs. Now, while you look at that, I will just tell you that there were tracks of wild dogs coming this way. Now, of course, wild dogs coming this way can mean that they passed this way sort of, well, almost hours ago, but it's possible that they're still coming this way. There are, however, definitely elephants over there. Herbert, I think, can see them. Let's go this way. Jason, you want to know what my favourite bushwalk experiences are? Jason, my favourite bushwalk experiences are almost too numerous to mention. I think the one that comes to mind from the last year, of course, was the time I spent with Shongile on foot. There were two great sightings. One, the first one we had with her, when we found her on foot and she approached us and climbed a tree and sat just above us and looked down on us and sat there for, 10 minutes or so. It was just fantastic, and so that one will stick in my mind forever, I think. Young leopardess, inexperienced with people, saw us. We sat down on a termite mound. We waited for her, and she came walking up, slowly, climbed a tree in front of us and sat just about 20 meters in front of us in the tree looking down. Oh, it was just a very magic experience. There are elephants through here, so we're just going to catch up with Herbie, and then we'll see if we can't view the elephants. What do you think, Herb? Too thick in here. Did you see them?
No.
Shall we try and view them? Or do you think it's too thick?
Yeah, we can do that.
Shall we try them? We've got a question about whether or not we get attacked out here. Well, you can induce an attack if you are insensitive enough to the animals out here. Then yes, you can induce an attack. The whole key about what we do out here, though, is to remain unseen and to not affect animals out here. And so the idea behind approaching these elephants is going to be to see if we can get into a position where we can view them without them knowing that we're there. So that's what we're going to do, and while we do that, we're going to hand you back to that lion before he falls fast asleep.
Indeed, James. The Birminghams doing what the Birminghams do best whenever I'm with them, and that is absolutely sleep as fast as they can. It seems to be a trait that I have with them. I'm yet to see the Birminghams in any sort of interesting situation whatsoever. I've seen them many times and I've heard them roar a few times, but other than that, 99% of the time that I've spent with the Birminghams has been exactly like this, flat sleeping and really not up to too much. So I was hoping we would get him moving around as the sun hit him, but it seems that he's decided it's been all too long a night and it's now time to have a nice rest, which is not ideal for us because it's quite sort of obscured by long grass and bits of sort of vegetation everywhere, and I was really hoping that he was going to go out onto the airstrip because this morning light is so pretty. It would have been fantastic to see him kind of moving out into the light, but as we were talking about earlier, his grooming behavior was indicative of him starting to kind of wind down and rest for the morning, so I suppose we can't be too surprised. And I'm sure this evening he's going to be a little bit more active, and so we'll try to come back this evening and see if he's not going to be moving around just around sunset. That's normally when they do start to get up, so we'll just have to be a bit patient. And I'm sure we will get an amazing sighting of the Birminghams at some point, or like I say, I will. I know that James and Jamie and Taylor and Brent have all had crazy sightings with the Birminghams, of them hunting and them with the inkahumas and cubs, especially in that drought period. But I've just seemed to never have had very much luck with them, which I suppose is okay. In fact, actually I lie. I've had one crazy sighting with the Birminghams, which was when they were still young and they weren't territorial yet. It was when the Matimbas were around and the Majingalans were around, and they came all the way up to Simbambili, the 5 of them, when it was when there were still 5 Birminghams. And we were staying, well, obviously I was working at Simbambili at the time, and it was late in the evening. It was maybe about 11 o'clock at night. And we had some guys that had come to do thatching, and so when they came and did the thatching, because there was a whole bunch of extra staff doing thatching work, some of them were staying in tents, and it was the first time they'd ever been in the bush, a lot of them, and so they ended up putting up their tents, and they had a few beers too many, and they then went to sleep. And about 11-12 o'clock at night we heard this massive commotion, and all of a sudden there was male lions roaring all over the place, and it ended up that the Majingalans and the Birminghams had a huge confrontation together. So it was 5 male lions from the Birminghams, 4 from the Majingalans, and they were chasing each other all around the camp, and they ended up chasing each other into the camp and right past these tents, roaring loudly. And when I woke up in the morning, we were watching with torches, and when I woke up in the morning, all these guys that had come to do the thatch and that were in their tents had vanished. They had decided that no, these were spirits that were coming to warn them that this was not a good place to be, and they literally packed their tents up and were gone before the sun had even risen. So it was quite comical in hindsight that these guys were so scared of the lions that they ended up moving on, but it was quite an amazing sound experience just for having that many male lions, 9 male lions roaring at one another and chasing each other around the camp. It was pretty incredible to watch, and that's why the Birminghams then shifted so far east for so long. It's because the Majingalans pushed them out, they then chased the Matimbas away and ended up settling more in this eastern section, and that's sort of the story of that, and it was quite an amazing sort of sighting to witness. So, Laurie, you're wondering what the name and ages of the Birmingham boys is. In terms of the ages, we don't have a definitive age. It's a little bit difficult. I know some people say that they've sort of guessed that their ages and that they were part of a pride that comes from north of us, and that there's a lot of speculation as to actually which cubs they were within that pride. But we think that they must be now approaching sort of 7 years old, about 6.5, 7, and the names of them is Tinyo, which is this male that we see lying flat, or can hardly see, should I say. And then you've got Mfumo, which is a male that's got lots of scars all over his face. He's got a big sort of gash under his right eye, and he had a big wound in his nose, and looks like the sort of most beaten up of the 4. And then we have Nena and Insuku, which are the 2 prettier boys of the group. So really that's the 4 of them. And then we used to have a 5th one that was around, but unfortunately he died from what we think was a buffalo horn to his chest and into his lung, and he ended up dying from that. And he didn't really have a set name. There was a few names thrown around about him, so he was called Scrapper or Tokolosh, and unfortunately he is no longer here. So the 4 of them are Nena, Nsuku, Mfumo and Tinyo, and those are them. It would be really nice to see all 4 together again. I don't actually think I've seen all 4 together in over a year. I know that they have every now and then they join together, but it seems with the Birmingham Coalition is that they spend a lot of time apart, which is interesting because with the Majingalans and the Matimbas and all these others that I've seen in my time, generally they spend a lot of time together, and the very successful coalition that the Majingalans have been is probably the key to their success, is that they've spent a lot of time together, and whenever there is any threat, you find all 4 of those Majingalans were together and they were confronting the threat. It was quite amazing to see. You'd find that they'd be split for a few days, and as soon as another male lion roared anywhere near them, they all 4 were together and they were warding off that threat, and that's probably why they ended up being so successful. And even now to this day, the 3 of them are always together. The 4th one unfortunately died at the beginning of the year, and so we now have just the 3 Majingalans left, but they still move as a unit, and they are still kind of the dominant males in the western part of the Sabi Sands, and even as much as up into the northern part here, since the disappearance of the Matimbas into Manyeleti. I believe somebody the other day saw one of the Matimbas in Londolozi, back in that area, so it'll be interesting to see where the other one is. But in terms of sort of male lion coalitions, the Majingalans are still really the kings of that central and western part of the Sabi Sands. But you can see he's now fast asleep. Even though the sun is hitting him, I don't think he's going to be waking up any time soon. Now, John, you're wondering where the Birmingham boys get their names from. Well, their name comes from an area north of us. So in the Timbavati Game Reserve, there's a section of that game reserve called Birmingham. And it's much like here in the Sabi Sands. Even though we have lodge names like in Koro and Djuma, the actual farm names are different. So this area, and the farm name for this area is Gowrie. And then we've got farms called Sparta, Ravenscourt, Elliscott, so there's a whole bunch of different farm names, and that's the same for the Timbavati. And so the farm name was called Birmingham, and this pride that these boys come from was called the Birmingham Pride because of where they spend time, and so that's why they got their name. It's got nothing else to do with just the area that they spend time in, really. So it's just an affectionate name from there, and you can see he is really not going to be spending too much more time active. There's a big sigh as the vehicle started, so I think what we're going to do is probably leave him and carry on and try and see if we can't go find those sticks and cubs, or see if those mating pair of leopards did indeed cross north, because I think our male lion is going to be very, very sleepy, and we don't have the best view of him at this stage. And so what we'll probably do is come back this evening for our sunset safari around sunset and see if we can't get a bit more activity. And now, while we carry on, let's go back to Jamie, who I think is still driving around and still listening out for her male leopard.
Oh, it sounds like Tristan's got some amazing plans for his sunrise safari. I'm still searching to see whether or not this leopard was actually real or it is some kind of a ghost leopard, because I don't see any tracks. I'm going to check all the way along the northeastern corner of Djuma, and then I'm going to work my way back towards Buffelshoek Dam, and let's see what we can find there. It is very, very quiet this morning, most notably the absence of elephants. Yesterday, every road that you drove down, there was an elephant waiting for you at some point along that road. Now they've all vanished. It's completely devoid of elephants. It's amazing how it happens that way. Obviously, this is, I'm talking purely on Djuma, not the entire reserve that we get to traverse, or the parts of the reserve that we get to traverse. But the elephants they're either here or they're really not. I know that sounds like such a stupid sentence, but you know what I mean. Yesterday was an elephant-filled safari. Today, there's not one. Okay, let's check here carefully. Good question. Coming through from Infinity, who'd like to know why is it called a game reserve. It's an old throwback to basically the idea of there being game, and game would strictly refer to things like impala, elephant, anything like that, big game, not necessarily the predators. But these days a game reserve refers to, within South Africa at least, I'm sure there's different terminology in different parts of Africa, game reserve refers to an area where there's big dangerous game, elephants, buffalo, lion, leopard, all sorts of things like that, rhino, anything along those lines. A nature reserve is where there are no lions and probably no elephants as well. So there's a slight difference there. There's quite a few nature reserves in South Africa. There's quite a few game reserves. It does not, which I think perhaps some people do get a bit confused by or concerned by, it does not mean that it is a place where there's hunting. So because something is called a game reserve does not mean that there's any hunting done here. There's no hunting done in this area at all. The Sabi Sand would not allow hunting. Track quiz, since I haven't done very well otherwise in terms of picking up tracks. Hold on, I've got 2 tracks here for you. Let me put myself in a position where you can see them. I'm going to keep them in the shade. The sun's a bit bright. Here we go. Oh, Jamie, are you going to catch yourself out here? Let me jump off quickly. So we're talking about 2 different tracks, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm not 100% sure on the one track, which is naughty. Now I'm going to try to ask you what they are, and I don't actually know. Oh, Ferg, which one are you on? Pick a track. Okay. Shall we go with this one over here? Can you see that one? Oh, is that exactly the one we're on? How clever am I? Not really. Not at all. Teamwork. Great teamwork. Okay. Track quiz for all of you. What made this track over here? Something with paws. They're the toes, and I'm not giving you any more clues. The end. That's it. That's all you're getting out of me. The other track I was going to ask you... I'm still going to ask you. I'm pretty confident in my answer, but I'll accept a few different answers. This track here. Here's a toe, and a toe. And there is a notable absence of another toe. What do you suppose that is? And I would compare... You have to get this answer right. These tracks are pretty much the same age. That's what I'm going to tell you. And that will be your clue for the second track. These tracks happened pretty much at the same time. So what do we have here? What 2 animals walked along this road? Neither of them are a leopard. Just to let you know, there are no leopard tracks here. It's one of those moments where I always think if I just look up and I'm going to look up and there's going to be a leopard right there looking at me, but there isn't. Wishful thinking on my part. So track 1 and track 2. What did we have here? What walked along this road? Almost at the same time as each other. Not necessarily exactly, but pretty much around the same time, because the dew has settled in both sets of tracks. Oh, goodness. This new long earpiece is causing me hassles. I keep tangling it in my steering wheel, tangling it in the various parts of the car. Okay. Onwards in search of the leopard. Interesting. Hold on a second. I'm going to show you these tracks again. But Tristan's desperately trying to call me with great, frantic haste. Go ahead, Tristan. Goodness, Tristan. If you're going to call, sorry, can we look down at those tracks again and I will try and contact him. Tristan. Final control, can you let Tristan know that we're trying to answer him, but we can't hear his responses? Because I can hear he's desperately trying to get hold of us, but I can't hear what he's trying to tell me. So Marco, on the subject of our tracks, you said... Okay, thanks very much, Chantal. Apparently, Tristan's just letting us know that Hosanna is on Little Gowrie, which is to the south of our Traverse area. Marco, track 1 was not a wild dog, but then you said for track 2, white-tailed mongoose. Now hence my slight confusion, because track 1 is in fact a white-tailed mongoose. That's exactly what track 1 is, but I'm thinking perhaps I didn't make track 2 very clear, and I'm trying to see if I can find a better position for you to see track 2, because maybe it's the case that you actually can't see it all that well. Let me try. Let's see if we can find a better place for track 2. Apparently we've got a suggestion of dove for track 2. Okay, that's a much better example. There we go. Now we've got both of them together. So let's have a look. Let me get a blade of grass and let's talk about this. It's not a dove, and I'll tell you why it's not a dove, but you are correct in that it's a bird. My earpiece is out for a second. The reason it is not a dove is there is no back toe. So there's no back toe, and doves walk like this. Let me show you what a dove walks. The way that a dove walks. I won't step on these tracks. A dove walks like this. So you don't actually get a gap between the various tracks in the way that you do with these birds. And the hint, of course, was the fact that these tracks happened around the same time. Very much around the same time. So this is the white-tailed. Can you see this one, Ferg, or am I too close to you? Very good. The trick with the white-tailed mongoose is the asymmetrical back pad over here and the size of it. A wild dog's track would probably be around about this sort of a size. The white-tailed mongoose track is about this size. So it's a bit small to be a wild dog. There's its claws, very long extended claws. Odd-looking little tracks. But of course one of our biggest mongoose species. So the other tracks, the bird tracks that we're looking at, don't have a back track. If it were a dove track, it would kind of look like this. And then the other track would be over here. That was a bit messy. So it's not a dove. Let's see if you can work out what it was. Look at there's one more thing. Look here. Look at this. There's the one track. There's another track of this bird. Look at the distance here. Quite a small foot, but quite a big distance. That's all I'm hinting at. That is all the hints I'm giving you. That's what I was looking at when I first jumped out, because I wasn't 100% sure about what track that was. Look at the distance between the tracks. Okay. There we go. Nailed it. Robin and Ali, you say bronze-winged courser. That is exactly what it was. It was a bronze-winged courser. Very well done. A nocturnal bird with long legs and no back toe. Brilliant. Bravo. On to James, who is decided to disprove my theory and found an elephant.
Okay, we found this herd of elephants, everybody. Don't know where the wild dogs have gone. And we know that Hosan is now in Little Gowrie, so we're going to focus on these elephants for now. But there are a lot of them around, so we're trying to figure out exactly where everyone is. That is a small portion of what I think is a much bigger herd, lurking both sides of the inevitable drainage line, which leads to Treehouse Dam. And I think some of them may have had a drink there before. Some of them may be leaving. Or there is just a sort of good feeding ground around here. And what I suspect is that many of the elephants we saw yesterday, those sort of, that large accumulation or agglomeration of different herds, could easily be right around where we're standing now. Now, I'm obviously talking quietly because I don't wish to startle any elephants. Those ones there that you're looking at are probably about, I'd say maybe about 50 to 100 meters away across the dry riverbed here. And if we go, we maybe head a little bit along this road. And let's just see if we can't see them a little bit better. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about our favourite experiences on foot. Elephants on foot is always very special because there's basically nowhere to hide. If they decide they don't like you and they want rid of you, you have no option but to try and sort of run away and disappear. You can't climb a tree like you could with a buffalo or a hippo or a rhino. You can't sort of stand and shout. Sometimes that's what you have to do, but you can't turn them as easily as you might turn a charging lion or leopard. They really are. You find yourself completely at their mercy. You're looking at that one way in the distance there. There's one that's probably about 300 meters away. So they really are spread throughout this vast area. Now, Weave Crew, you're wondering if I've ever had to scare off an aggressive animal. There's quite a nice view of this one now, Seb. Weave Crew, yes, I have once or twice. But, you know, I come from a school of guiding that is very, very much, how should we say it? It's non-aggressive. It's a school of guiding that is very much comes from the point of view of how do we make animals feel, and also the school of thought that says if an animal reacts to you, if you come up and an animal sees you, then your walk is a failure, then you have done something wrong, and by creating a situation where the animal has seen you and reacted in an aggressive fashion, you have made a mistake, and it is a blight or a black mark on your character, or black mark on your guiding skills. And because of that approach, I think I've probably had fewer aggressive encounters than some. And it is very much an approach that, I had all kinds of bravado beaten out of me by my first tutors. They were very much men who came from a very mature school of thought that didn't believe in approaching animals to the point that they ever became angry with you. They didn't believe in sensationalizing things like this. And that's very, very important to me, that we don't sensationalize this, that we don't present the animals of the wilderness out here as being aggressive and pitted against us as man walking alone in the wilderness. To me, that's just absolute rubbish. We're going to continue to try and get a decent view of these elephants. Jamie has got, I think, possibly the best animal to look at in this light at this time of day.
It's my absolute favourite animal to look at in this light at this time of day, because this is when dwarf mongoose are at their happiest. This time of the morning, which includes the whole process of anal pasting, which is what that one was doing over there, marking their territory on a stick. This time of the morning, it is time to warm up after a long chilly night, all tucked up together in their burrows. Now it's time to come and sunbathe and get ready for the day ahead. And that means playing, grooming, reaffirming their bonds, anal pasting, playing. Look at them! We've just had so many spectacular dwarf mongoose sightings recently. They've got lots of little ones, and the young ones are very, very playful. They enjoy each other's company. It means resting, it means climbing, exploring, and these guys have got so curious. I suspect, Ferg, although I can't see, I actually think we've got some right under our vehicle. I think we do. We've got them right next. There we go. You can just see the movement. This is the wonderful thing about dwarf mongooses. They're now sniffing our tires. On the left side, unfortunately, so I can't see them. You can see the rest of the family playing, though. And you just get some groups that are so relaxed that you get to watch their behaviour and their playfulness. They're having so much fun. running in, running out. The little ones responding to squeaks and calls and immediately dashing away and then coming straight back. Now that branch has played scent marker for all of the dwarf mongoose that have come out. And every single one, as soon as they smell it, is then inspired to deposit their own scent upon it. Sniff, sniff, sniff. Does that smell interesting? So many fascinating smells. And you can see the difference between the ones that are, I would basically call them sub-adults. Here you go, depositing more scents. And the fully grown adults. And the sub-adults are very playful, dashing about with the rest of the group. Sure, Ferg, keeping you guessing there. I didn't know which way they were going to go either. Come on, little ones, come and lie out in the sun. That's what I would be doing if I were you. Now these are the much, much smaller cousins of the track that I asked you earlier, the white-tailed mongoose. And Daniel, you want to know, do we ever see larger mongoose? We do. White-tailed mongoose are nocturnal. They are probably the largest species that you're likely to see on these live safaris, but they're nocturnal and solitary. Hello? Oh, bye-bye. Did you get very brave there? Coming to sniff our vehicle. Sorry, Daniel, I'll finish off the sentence in a moment. What are you up to? So, Daniel, yes, we do see larger mongoose. There is a mongoose called a water mongoose that is slightly larger than the white-tailed. And I think the drought last year kind of caused them to move on. I never saw one, but I did find tracks of water mongoose around some of the water holes. So they were around. They're also nocturnal. Then in terms of the social mongoose, we do see banded mongoose, but they're far more shy than the tiny little dwarf mongoose. And by the way, we're going to stop, because we've already done that track of the white-tailed mongoose, we are going to stop once these mongoose move off and have a look at the tracks they've left behind here. Now, we do occasionally see banded mongoose. For some reason here, they are so shy that we hardly ever get them on camera. I think I've seen them a total of maybe 4 times in the 2 years that I've been here. Someone just did a forward roll. All the gymnastics happening here. And then last but not least, the slender mongoose, again, also quite shy, but we occasionally see them. Oh, Jean, you want to know about mum and dad and the way that they reproduce and if they stay together for life. It's possible, but unlikely. The way that things work in a dwarf mongoose society, it's a bit more complex than that, but they have an alpha male and an alpha female. Oh, ow, that looks sore. Sharp teeth on ear. They do mate for a considerable period of time together. That does not mean that the alpha male will be completely faithful to the female. He might, in fact, mate with some of the lower-ranking females and have little babies through her. The chances of those babies surviving are quite slim because the alpha female will kill them. And basically she does that because the whole group in a dwarf mongoose society is devoted to looking after her offspring. And she doesn't want them to be distracted by other babies as well. But things change. Hierarchies change. You get coups. You get situations where an alpha is killed. And then the situation will change with the dwarf mongoose. And you'll get another alpha coming up, rising up in the ranks. So they're complex, very, very complex social structures. And believe it or not, while we watch these guys wrestle, the chances are when an alpha has to be decided, when there's a situation where a group is without an alpha, it's not usually an antagonistic fight that they go through in order to determine who gets to be the next alpha. It's usually a grooming process. It's decided by shows of affection rather than violence. And they'll have grooming competitions where they groom each other to the point that they are sodden, covered in saliva, and one is more exhausted than the other. But that doesn't mean that they don't fight, and they will fight in territories, well, in situations where one group of dwarf mongoose has invaded their territory. So they are territorial. That's why they do all of the scent marking as well. But there's another situation where you might see an alpha coming up where you didn't have one before. Let's say a male disperses from a group. It might take him a very long time to get accepted into a new dwarf mongoose business. But if he does come in and he is big and strong and he is a worthwhile leader, he might actually usurp the alpha male's position, and then he will be the one that mates with the alpha female. So it's complex, and there's no set formula to it. And of course there has to be dispersal, because otherwise there'd be a huge amount of inbreeding. Oh, look at this little one coming, Ferg. Little bit down. Hello, little one. Hello. It's okay. Wants to come and join the rest of the group that's foraging off to my left, and it's not quite sure about us yet. Sandy, you want to know if the dwarf mongoose are related to rats and mice? No, not closely. They're a completely separate family. They belong to a family known as the Herpestids. Herpestidae family, which basically includes the mongoose, the meerkat, those sorts of creatures. And you'll probably find that they're more closely related to something like a mustelid, which would be a ferret, or a honey badger. So no, or an otter. They're more closely related to those creatures than they are to rodents. I'm going to sit here patiently because I actually think we're going to have a stunning mongoose sighting. While we do, James has managed, I think, to get you a better view of his elephants on foot.
It's not necessarily a much better view, but there's one that's standing next to the tree there, and I'm pretty sure that she can see me. The light is shining onto us, but she's not in the slightest bit affected. So she's just carrying on feeding. There might be a young bull, and that might explain the sort of lack of any sort of reaction to us. But we were seen by one cow earlier on, quite a long distance away, probably about the same distance as that one. She didn't react very nicely. She looked at us and sort of left in high dudgeon with her tail stuck out. Now, we're not going to try and get any closer to them, because in order to get closer to them, we would almost certainly expose ourselves properly. At this distance, they're not going to be too affected by us. But if they were to become aware of us much closer than this, they would become quite upset. And obviously that's not what we want. We want them to be totally comfortable with us on foot. We want them to habituate to us on foot in the same way that they have to us in vehicles. It really is the most gorgeous morning. And I said there's quite a nice view here. If you want to come through here, or have you still got a view? If you come through here, you'll get a nice view. It reminds me that we're in the winter by the amount, or the ease with which sound travels here. And we can hear noises even from the camp. We're a long way from camp, we're probably about 3 kilometers away from camp. And so these elephants are easy to hear. They're coming this way now. So if she comes in, she is the other side of a drainage system there, and what that can do is give you a very false sense of security, because elephants are much more agile than you think they are. So as soon as she moves down into that drainage, we will back off quite quickly, because she will be on top of us in seconds, even if she's not aware that we're here, you know. But the rest of the herd you can see moving slowly off towards Twin Dams area. So they're moving due east along the road there. And Herbie's just keeping a lookout, because I keep hearing the odd branch breaking behind us. And Keith, you say what's the best way to scare off an elephant? Keith, that would be the very last thing we want to do, is to scare off the elephants. If you got into a situation where the elephant became aware of you and took umbrage and decided it was going to come towards you, then you can clap and shout if you like. But the best way to remove yourself from danger is to remove yourself completely. I do not come from the school of thought that says you stand your ground and, show the animal who's boss. I'm under absolutely no illusions as to who's boss in this situation, and it sure as nuts ain't me, or Seb, or Herbert. And I think that approach is possibly the right one in this area. I've been on walks with guides who come from a completely different school of thought, where there's a lot more bravado involved, and if an animal looks like it's going to get it slightly uppity with you, then you load your weapon and tell it to come and try its luck with you. And I really think that is the wrong approach. In the background we can hear the chin spot batises, a few cisticulars, some southern black tits, bzz, 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 bzz. One or two francolins calling their last before they settle in for the morning. And the overwhelming sound right now is the sort of tearing of leaves, the breaking of branches, as this big herd of elephants, must be 50 animals, feeds along the drainage and towards twin dams, where I suspect in about, the front of the herd may have already reached there, but I suspect that they will all eventually fetch up there for a brief drink. And perhaps that playtime that we saw yesterday around Gallagher Pan, for about an hour, from about 8:30, they spent playing around there. So they've probably been feeding like this, on the move, since just before first light. And so by 8:30, the little ones are going to be tired. There's going to be a need for them to have a drink and a brief rest before they carry on. This is just very, very special to spend time like this on foot with elephants. They make us feel very peaceful when they're not having a go at you. Now, Skip, you're in Texas. I think you're one of our younger viewers, and it's lovely to hear from you. You want to know if I take guests, or we take guests on foot. Skip, I don't anymore. I used to. It was something I didn't enjoy doing. And it's because I really disliked having the risk of other people's safety as my responsibility. Some people really enjoy that. I didn't enjoy it at all. And it was mainly, Skip, because you take 8 people, 8 complete strangers on a walk, and if you don't know how they're going to react, you can tell them not to do, and you give them very strict instructions: don't run, listen to me when I tell you to, when I put my hand up, don't move, etc., and you tell them all these things. But because they're strangers, you don't know how they're going to react, and they also don't know how they're going to react. If they see an elephant like this, will they become overwhelmed with fear and run away? If a lion charges, will they be able to stand their ground, or will they run away? So it's very difficult to know, and I didn't enjoy that part of it. I love being on foot in the bush, but taking other people out on foot is not my favourite thing at all. Just a beautiful sighting. I think we've got one more view of this cow, and then we'll probably extract from this area. Chris, you want to know if an elephant can jump? An elephant is the only mammal, of course, that cannot jump, as far as I'm aware, other than, say, an aquatic mammal, like a whale, but even something like a sea lion can jump. They can't jump. They must always have 1 foot on the ground at a time. They must always have at least 2 feet on the ground. I think that's pretty much how it goes. And it's why they don't run. They walk very quickly. And the difference, of course, when you're running, you are jumping, basically. You're jumping from 1 foot to the other. Your body leaves the ground for a little while. And something like a horse, when it's cantering, it's the same thing. Its body leaves the ground ever so briefly. Elephant never has that. They always are attached to the ground in some way. Alrighty, let's head back across to Jamie. I think she's still with her Mongoose troop, and we'll see if we can get one more view of these elephants in the meantime.
I'm indeed still with our troop or business of Dwarf Mongoose, who have moved off the road. I think they've decided that they're warm enough, and I'm not surprised given the amount of play and wrestling that was happening. So a quick grooming session, and then it's time to start their day. Most of them have already moved off to begin foraging, and there's just a few left enjoying the sunny spot on a fallen bush willow. I have to tell you, one of them just did the most spectacular, I don't even know how to describe it. It was almost leopard-like leap into the tree itself, sort of onto that upright dead stump. It was incredible. I was very impressed. All of them looking like they wanted to try and behave like leopards and climb up that tree. Let's see if this little one does it now. Here we go. Oh, no, Fergus definitely not as coordinated as the other two. Yay. Sorry, did not that not work out quite as well as the time before, huh? But looking up at that hollow sort of part of the tree, it would be the perfect spot for hidden scorpions and other such things. And we don't tend to think of mongoose as tree climbers, but look at that one off to the left there, Ferg. It's run all the way up the tree. Even further to the left. Further. There we go. Perfect sunning spot. And the advantage of height as well. It's the perfect place to keep a lookout for potential threats and get warm at the same time. I was just thinking, every time that we find dwarf mongoose, 9 times out of 10, it's by hearing them. And you actually can't blame them because they can't see each other in this long grass. So everything has got to be done by contact calls. Now, Naira, you want to know if they have a sentry. Yes, they always do, although of course they will definitely all be looking out for potential threats, and they will all alarm call if there is a potential threat. The sentry doesn't always sit as prominently as the sentry does in a meerkat family. So I'm sure there's a possibility you've watched Meerkat Manor and you've seen the way that the meerkats sit upright on their back legs. What did you find? Sit upright on their back legs and watch for threats. A lot of the time, the alpha male dwarf mongoose will be the one that takes responsibility for watching for potential threats, but not always. They will take turns of doing it, but they won't sit up as much on their hind legs and sort of look about in the way that meerkats do. That's quite a big dwarf mongoose. I would not be surprised if that was one of the bigger males. Now, Infinity Killer, you want to know if wolverines are part of the same family as mongoose are. I always get myself completely confused when I'm trying to say mongoose, mongooses, mongai, I don't know. It gets very confusing. The answer to that is no, they're not part of the same family, but they're part of a related family. So there's a group of 3 different families called the mustelids, the herpestids, and the viverids. Our wolverine is part of the mustelid family, if I'm not very much mistaken. Obviously, we don't get them here. But a wolverine is part of the mustelid families, which would put it in more closely related to something like, for example, a honey badger or a ferret. They're together in that family. Mongoose used to be lumped together in a family called the Viveridae family, and it's only in the last decade or so that they've actually moved, according to biologists, they've actually decided to classify them as a separate family, the Herpestidae family. Before, they were lumped together with genets as well, large spotted and small spotted genets that we see. So they're related, but not in the same family. A lot of what links those families is this, or links the families in terms of evolution, but also separates them in terms of the different families, is the structure of their anal glands. They all have anal glands, and they use them still. They're very functional, but they're structured in different ways. Fergus, I think our mongoose sighting is done.
I think these guys are